Yeah, no, I was not showing the presentation, but I would be talking about um, this this success story which we had from Rumbak, and how it started and what we did and how it went on. And I think Behzad will later on give you the what happened later on when he came in and what the situation there is, because I've been not in touch so much there. But one of the things which is very key to any conservation program is the long-term commitment. Uh, See, 2 years project, 3 years commitment, it's not going to work. If you have 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, the longer it is, the better it is. To change to take place, to monitor it, to ensure that success continues, you need a long-term commitment, and that's the key to the success story. And fortunately for me, I was there for PhD, and it took more than I was expecting 2, 3 years. It took me 6, 7 years to finish. So my presence was there, then my interest was there to carry on do some research, and that itself, without doing much, um, talking to people about wildlife, connecting with people, not talking about the conservation work, it really generates a lot of interest in people, and people start thinking the way you start talking to it. It kind of gets ingrained in your thinking. Just sitting, chatting, having dinner, tea with them. It just every day talking just does help. And if you're doing it for over 10 years, 15 years, then it certainly, without doing much, without saying a word, asking for a commitment, things can change. And so it's very, very important that for any conservation program we are taking, whether we're doing based on research, community, or tourism, I think the key to success is a long-term commitment is an important thing. Um, and if you look at some of the big success stories wherever you are, and if you look at snow leopard, there are places where there was a long-term presence. So Rumbak was one, SPT is another one, and there are many in other areas in Mongolia and other places. The long-term commitment does help. And when we uh, started, when I finished my work, and then we were continuing with our some kind of monitoring work, continuing the work which I was planning in terms of the research, we realized that in the middle of that 93, 94, there was funds that started coming in to the Ladakh Forest Department, and they started giving compensation to the livestock that were killed by wolf and snow leopard, and also the crop damage. And in last 7, 8 years, we have never seen a complaint from the local people about the crop damage, especially. They were okay with one or two snow leopard when they had made a kill. Usually, they will find it, they will chase it away, take it, bring back the carcass, or if they couldn't find one, so it was lost. It was not a big deal. It was part of their livelihood, life. But when the compensation started coming, we realized that in within couple of years, the whole sentiments of the people have changed drastically. It's about then they now these animals belong to somebody. So any loss or damage, even by their own livestock, will be blamed on the blue sheep, um, and things like that. And so we thought we should be working with the community that listen, that's we need to how we can change it. And we when we started initially the project which we were doing were monitoring, we then worked with Earthwatch groups. So we were bringing volunteers to do research. And when we started using horses, porters, health, the first year, um, when we did it, we used the people we were using it. There were people who were our friends were. their horses, people we knew, we were taking as a porters, people will help us. Um, and the very first year, end of the season, community knew us very well. So they actually very politely had a meeting with us and called us and told us that they why we are not using other families of the community. And that is where we realized that what we were doing was wrong. That we can actually, this is a lot of economic benefit that's coming in, and that if we can use it with the community as a group, then we can have the whole Rumbak, Jinchin, and Yuruche community together and can work out a program or work with the sentiments of the community, which has become not becoming unfriendly of tourist snow leopard and towards blue sheep, and make it more snow leopard and blue sheep friendly. So we then talked to them how we can do it. There was how we can make a committee and all, but it was very difficult if the politics comes in and things like that. They decided the best thing is to give it to the Gompa, and then in the Gompa they will have their own set of committee will decide whose horses will go, who will come as a porter, who will go with the horses, and the money will be equally shared. And we did it for about 6 7 years, and it drastically changed the sentiments towards snow leopard and blue sheep, because then now the not only the earthwatch groups which are bringing, then the filming groups came in, that and also money directly, and on top of the tips money, on top of that any donations which came in, it came to the community directly. They started looking at the benefits of having these blue sheep closer uh, to be seen at a close distance. Snow leopard earlier was chased around whenever was sighted. Now it's not being chased around. And if they saw a kill or their goat or sheep has been killed, they will not be driving it away. If there is a film crew, they will inform them so that they can film it. And all it slowly it's all changed. And I remember one time we were about to pack up our camp and then moving to some other camp in Rumbak. The horses was supposed to come early morning. Um, they came little late, so we asked what happened, and they told us that don't move the camp today. That we saw snow leopard making a kill of blue sheep. And then so I said, what was the delay? Then they said the problem was when they had a discussion about themselves, that the fresh in front of them in the winter a blue sheep is killed, and they thought they can take the entire carcass there and can have Losar is coming up, so they can have a good party in the village. But then they decided that if the film crew can had the tourists who are there to see, they can be very happy. They can give us in donation much larger than with that they can have a much better party. So all this, though we didn't start very in an organized way that we will be working for the community for a conservation. We only looked at the how to change the thinking or the losses they are having. If we can compensate that from the tourism revenue, we were hoping that it will change their perception, and that's how we started in the Rumbak. And what had happened was in those years is that a lot of people from the local community came as a guide to us under training. So Rinchin, the Ashok Rinchin, from who then later on created the Vishnu Leopard Conservancy in India Trust. He used to come every year for us. We later on, slowly, he's learned about snow leopard, got interested into it, and then he started the homestays and also looked at the other benefit one can do. The ranger Nobu wanted to do the corrals, fenced corrals, so that there's no um, large numbers of kills are made once the snow leopard gets into the corrals. and kill large number of sheep and goats. So then he took over from there in 80, 98, 99, or 2001 or 2002, I think. From He started homestays, he started this building corrals, but it all started with us at the with the Forest Department Ranger Nobu's idea how these things can be done. The benefits were very, very small, but the results or an impact in the Rumbak and the entire Hemis was quite significant. So the key to this is that you have to involve the community, and you have to bring the community as a unit. You have to have a long-term commitment, and it takes time for community to realize, understand, and we don't you don't have to um, drive the thing. Once they understand um, the benefit of it, having snow leopard bringing value to them in the neighborhood, having blue sheep adds value to their neighborhood, then they will take care of it. They know the best way of doing it. But when it's the individual benefit, then it divides the community, and then the competition happens. Then the unhealthy competitions comes in, and that's where the problems comes in. If community, as long as community is united, I think most of our problems can be solved. The other thing is that what we really with Rinchen, later on in our part of it, we worked on is that they translate that economic benefit into the conservation action. So through bringing in money from the tourism, donations, charity, um, mm, something which we brought in, and then with the help of other NGOs, the corral building came in, um, then the homestays funds started coming in. It all helped community to commit that they will not disturb these snow leopards. They will not be chasing away the blue sheep, so that you can see them. The tourists can see them from the very, very close quarters. That kind of, because initially there was no major conservation actions needed, but simply so that certain behavior changes in the community made it possible that you can see snow leopard there. I don't think there were less snow leopard there. Now there are more, but it's just that the snow leopards become more visible. Blue sheep, now you can be handshaking distance, and they will not be shying away from you. Those kind of changes took place after the community started working and receiving benefit. And that's something we need to monitor. Now it's a different level, because now um, the tourism comes in, it brings its own dynamics with it, and how and it can, community as a whole can be manipulated also to have more and more tourists, and that is something um, the conservation NGOs can play a role in looking at, convincing them how to make it more responsible way, how to make it more sustainable way. That's something very, very important. And the other
Thanks
thing,
so much, Raghu. Oh, sorry. Thanks
okay,
so much, Raghu, for a wonderful talk on different ways of mitigating risk, especially working so closely with the community, keeping them on board throughout the way, having discussions with the community. So thank you so much for walking us through the example of how you started in Rumbak as well. I was
mhm.
wondering, maybe we could open it out now for a little bit. Maybe there are examples from other places in the landscape where they have mitigated risk, and from other spaces where there have been particular risks, and how they have gone about mitigating them or enforcing it, or if we have examples as well.
You can ask people how they have gone up about. We have seen some examples from China and other places, but not necessarily in terms of the tourism at all, but the community participation, and how community are benefiting through some of the programs which people are doing. I think we can take that advantage here.
I see Ajay is here. I don't know if Ajay can comment on that, because you have a lot of experience, Ajay, with engaging communities.
Justin, we have been, but not necessarily through tourism. And I completely agree with Raghu Saab's point, which he made, that dealing with the community, because something that Behzad also said, that they have their own inherent dynamics. And if the benefit is for the entire community, then it may be more fruitful in the long term, because these power dynamics can do strange things. But what we have been trying to do is to navigate those same challenges, but trying to work directly towards more preventive measures, or mitigation in instances of negative interactions. Our experience of engaging with tourism or tourists directly has been relatively limited.
Thanks, Ajay. Yeah, I guess it's more related to community conservation, like we had talked previously. I know in China they've tried to really mitigate the risks of only going, like we talked about previously, just certain individuals benefiting from the program and trying to distribute it more amongst the community. And recently, because around 45% of the fund goes to the community came together and decided that it should go for poverty relief within the community. So the least wealthy families should benefit first. So as they've gone on, they've also tried to address this further, and deciding, and also, maybe as we talked about last time, they set up a committee later as well, realizing it should be really the community who brings forward the program, and less the NGO, less Shangshui. So they had this community of community members making the decisions. And if there was, as Joanna mentioned, that somehow enforce should come from the community itself, well, because there was sometimes potential corruption within members, right? Like Ismail mentioned, sometimes some members were paid huge tips. I heard one instance where a tip was given in terms of a car to one of the guides, which is a massive tip. How can you offset that tip, right? But then the committee came together and decided, okay, how can we deal with this? And then they found a way to deal with that issue themselves. But yeah.
Justin and Ranjini, see, another thing which is very key is to build skill sets in the community, and that really helps the community become more active, actively participate, and also helps in promotion of, if it's a tourism related, then the skills sets for tourism. So for us, it was the tourism spotting, snow leopard spotting became the skill set which was transferred to a couple of people, and then now the spotters, that skill has been moved on to many different places. Then there were few guides who were interested in snow leopard, learned about snow leopard natural history. They came and worked with us, and that skill sets have transferred. And then the local people also knew more than I knew, but they now knew what the community, the tourists want to know, and so that they can also can guide. So in developing a program, I think the creating skill sets are very important for conservation purposes, for tourism. If we are targeting tourism, related to tourism, those are very important.
Yeah, that's true, Raghu. Aliana has has an interesting point in the chat, because she says, does anyone have experience working with tourism in Bhutan or being a tourist there? the system they have in place is very interesting. It's very high level regulation and enforcement from the national government, not just local governments or communities. So here there's a lot of, it's very top down management in some sense. So that brings an interesting point.
I think they have. Can you hear me?
Yes, Raghu, we can hear you.
I think they regulate the numbers in the country by having, say, you have to spend $500 per day or something like that minimum amount, and that kind of regulate. But once the tourists are in there, I think I don't know much. It will be interesting to learn more about how they then once the tourists who are there already, how is their activities are regulated. It will be interesting to know.